Hi everyone, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks. So one of my favourite things about playing pole tanks on my streams are that sometimes I play vehicles that are just simply forgotten about, or vehicles that maybe aren't the most meta things that I'm just playing to be able to try and get the field mods on. And yeah, just every once in a while it sends me down a trip down memory lane, and it's a beautiful thing. And today I'm going to be playing in one of the original boomsticks of World of Tanks. This is the Object 268. It's a vehicle that pretty much remains more or less unchanged since it first went in, apart from a couple of very big deals. Number one, originally when all of the tier 10 tank destroyers went into the game, the 152 and 155mm guns all dealt 850 damage. Yeah, that's right. Once upon a time, the Foch B, or should I say the Foch 155, was dealing 850 damage per shot. Vehicles like the T110E4 and T110E3 also were dealing 850 per shot. And that's what made the T110E4 feel so special. And a vehicle like this, the Object 268 as well, with 850 alpha damage, it really was a bit of a boomstick. Wargaming found that the top tier tank destroyers were a little bit OP, and so they nerfed all of them down, although I believe that they did give them a little bit of reload compensation. Some of the vehicles that needed a bit of a buff got more compensation than maybe some of the ones that needed a little bit of a debuff, or a nerf even. Nerf, what am I doing? Combining nerfs and buffs into nuffs? Let's not do that. I'm looking at you, T110E4, which at one point was probably the best vehicle in the game. So Wargaming nerfed the 268 a little bit like that, but also they kind of nerfed how pay to win this vehicle was. Woo! So we start off the game with a little bit of a tap into the 122 TM, helping out our IS-3A there. What was I saying? Of course, I was saying that Wargaming actually nerfed the pay to win of this vehicle. Originally, this tank had higher high explosive anti-tank penetration than even the Jagdpanzer E100. While it has 395mm of heat penetration these days, originally it had 450mm of penetration. You could pretty much just auto-aim at an IS-7 and fire at pretty much the thicker parts of the IS-7 turret, and those gold rounds were going to go in. Oh, it was absolutely filthy. The Object 268 these days, with 395mm of penetration, is massively nerfed in comparison, but definitely a better game for it. One thing that I love about the 268 is it's just this absolute mix match of pretty darn good DPM at 2,727 damage per minute, whereas other vehicles at tier 10, some tank destroyers, dip down to around about the 2,400 mark. It's not quite up in the leagues of the Stridsvagn 103B, which has like 3,300, but when you have this big old 750 alpha damage hitting gun, you do expect its reload to be a little bit longer, and therefore overall its damage per minute to be a little bit less. But when this vehicle gets going, just let me clarify what I said at this game as well. I typed in LT432, come and spot this flank, but woohoo! I believe we just overmatched the top of the T-34's turret there, and again, it looks like we're knocking their hit points down enough and the other players are picking up the kills. That's absolutely no problem for me. I like being a little bit of a support tank destroyer from this position. Having our binoculars set up here as well means that we're going to be seeing everything that we need to, and oh, it's a 60 TP. Yeah, a bit of a boomstick there, right, boys and girls? Right into the ammo rack of the 60 TP, and when you have such high alpha damage, yeah, when it goes into the right spot, I guess the 395 heat pen, as I said in one of my original best moments videos, definitely still works. Although that was an armor-piercing shell there, knocking the head clean off the tier 10 Polish heavy tank. The 60 TP, not too well anymore, and we dealt 2,191 in a single shot. And after that, I feel like, oh, maybe I can get a little bit further forwards. Maybe I can go and try and take the fight to the enemy team. Although, probably not the best bet right now to do that. I don't want to get spotted by something like the LTTB. I don't want to get found by even the Liberté, and they've got a 268 version 4 who is also not spotted. And while, you know, when you're playing in the big boomstick and you make a 2,000 damage ammo rack, you really feel all confident that you can go in and do whatever you want. Yeah, this vehicle, unlike the 268 version 4, isn't really idiot proof. That's something that I want to go on a little bit more as well, and we're going to be seeing later on in the video a justification for it. I really don't think the 268 version 4 was even necessary inside the game. I think that the original 263 had a real fun, all-in, derpy playstyle with a nice big weak lower plate, but if you could face-hug your opponents, or even if you can hide that lower plate, I feel like it was just an armoured, I don't really give a monkey's kind of tank. I think it was lovely. I don't think there was any need for an Object 268 version 4 in the game, and I think that the game was worse upon its introduction. And I think also that if you wanted to play that kind of assault tank destroyer playstyle, why didn't you look at the 268 anyway? This vehicle has 187 millimeters of frontal armor and it's very well angled. And if you're using some of the gun depression and you make that frontal pike even better, the upper hull does get fairly decent indeed. Especially in a matchup like this when you're playing against tier 8s and tier 9 tanks, you don't have to worry too much about engaging your opponents. Oh, I just love that .33 accuracy. This is one of the most accurate high alpha damage guns in the game. A lot like the Jagdpanzer 100 and the Grilla, but it's so nice when it's just a Soviet tank that you can also just, you roll the dice and it more often just goes right. The 268 is just so dependable with that gun. Of course, if you do fully aim the vehicle in, it doesn't have the best aim time at 2.7 seconds. If you want something that you're going to be able to snipe, pinpoint, and be a lot more reactionary, you probably want to get something more like a Grilla or a Stritzwang 103B. But as we're going to see now with this corridor of gameplay, as we are going to be assaulting down the eastern corridor of this map, you're going to see that even though my team is down by 4,000 hit points, what a bizarre situation this is. We have 4 more tanks, but we have 4,000 less hit points. And so I realized it probably wasn't a good idea to dilly-dally and to allow the enemies to win this eastern flank. But don't worry, team! About a third of our remaining hit points is coming over here to be able to help you out. And we're going to play this vehicle as if it is an assault tank destroyer, maybe even to a point where we're playing it like a 268 version 4 could only dream of playing. Because remember, unlike the 268 version 4 that has more of a tier 9 tank destroyer gun than a tier 10 tank destroyer gun, yeah, this thing really is full tier 10 tank destroyer gun. So I'm going to make my way towards the 111-14. We find the 121B at the back of the map. The 121B is on all of their hit points. But now that I've got them below the ridgeline, I'm going to turn my armor towards the WZ-111-14, put a big old shot into them to try and encourage my team to come down the hill, try and assist me, be a little bit of a tank in this scenario, and now I'm going to turn around, make my way down the slope, and go after the 121B as well. And just like that, with the assault on the WZ-111-14, we've now managed to shift this game, at least with regards to hit points, back into our team's favor. And luckily with the LT-432 making that hero light tank play down the western flank, it looks like he's going to be spotting for our team as well. So right now, I just want to get up on this ridgeline, get around and go and show this 121B what I am made of. And already at 5,600 damage, we're now about to fire our final remaining armor-piercing round. I don't usually get up into matchups like this in an Object 268, which is why I like to take so many HE and so many high explosive anti-tank rounds. So I see that the 121B is making their way towards me. Luckily I still have my repair kit, and thank you to the E50 above me for distracting the 121 for long enough for me to be able to get over that ridgeline, put a round into the 121B's upper hull, and I was going to try and finish it off with a little bit of a ram there, because this is a heavy tank as well. It weighs 51 tons, if you manage to get up to speed, if you've got a decent driver, which I don't have on this tank, and you have controlled impact, yeah, it can definitely provide a few claps, especially to some medium tanks when you don't quite have enough alpha damage to be able to shut them down. And talking about not having enough, I drove like a bit of a donkey there, and we didn't have enough grunt in the engine to be able to get up the slope. But even though that wasn't really the tank's fault, it was my fault, I'd like to highlight that the power to weight ratio of this vehicle is very decent at over 16.5, allowing you to get whatever you need to get to be able to deal that damage. And so at the end of the game, in this kind of scenario, our LT-432 is dead, our Indian Panzer gets shut down, we sling a heat round into our nemesis in the form of the 268 version 4 over the ridgeline there, and now it's time to push the pedal to the metal and to be able to get forwards to see if we can be able to get any more kind of spotting against what looks like a full health Super Conqueror on the enemy team. Not quite full health. Looks like he's down to about 3/4, possibly even 80% hit points. But if my team haven't dealt any damage to them, there might be a real good opportunity to transition this game from being a decent round up to being a very decent round. And hello, 268 version 4, but oh no. Possibly the easiest shot of the game turns into an absolute disaster, and the first round enters our vehicle from the enemy Super Conqueror. And if you're hearing some kind of engine fun outside, yes, it seems like the local Belarusian Gopniki are now outside my house, revving their engines about as loud as they can. But I'm hoping that my noise reduction filter settings are going to be able to get rid of those. What am I talking about? That was just me revving the engine of my Soviet Object 268. I hope there aren't any tanks outside Belarus. Possibly. I digress. I digress massively as we finish this monster game for the 268, showing you why this vehicle is the original Boomstick, and why every once in a while it's good to get back into some of the classics. And look, I know this was a nice matchup. I know this was Prokhorovka, but it does feel oh so good to at least pull off a magic game every once in a while in the classics, like this original Boomstick. So unsurprisingly, for the 8,500 damage that we dealt in this game, we achieve a high caliber. And our 1,189 experience, while it's not the highest, it's not bad for a tier 10 tank destroyer. It was enough to conquer an ace tanker. I think a few people need to get out in this vehicle and pump that a little bit higher. That's quite a low ace tanker for a tier 10 tank destroyer. And luckily, because we didn't fire too many high explosive anti-tank rounds until we ran out of our armor piercing rounds, make a decent profit with a premium account, and we would have pretty much broke even without. And so the Object 268, is it a vehicle that you should be jumping to be able to get your hands on right now and taking out onto the battlefield? No. The Object 268 version 4 still has by far the best win ratio of any tier 10 tank destroyer, although you could argue that a lot of its statistics were back from when it was flat out overpowered. It's still very, very good, averaging 52.54% wins. And we have to scroll all the way down to this part of the list and take a look at the Object 268, and it's pretty abysmal, 48.54% average win ratio before we find that tank. But nevertheless, some people will see this as a bit of a challenge, and unless you're a hipster and you want to play the WZ-113 GFT, then if you want to play a full-blooded tier 10 tank destroyer gun, which still has some armor, unlike vehicles like the Gorilla, and a reasonable amount of speed to be able to get yourself into harm's way, yeah, the Object 268, it can still do all right. Anyway, that's it for today, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, and you liked the trip down memory lane in the Object 268, give it a thumbs up. But if you hated it, give it a thumbs down. And if you're watching this video as it goes live on Sunday, it's time for the World of Tanks Tech Tree Showcase, live right now on twitch.tv/QuickyBaby. And this week, most of you have voted for the Object 140, the tier 10 Soviet all-round medium tank. And so come along to find out live right now if the 140 is still one of my favorites, especially with the 7 degrees of gun depression buff, or if other tanks are just getting better and better and better, whether the Soviet line is no longer the meta. And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.